and it's Paul Bycott.
This meeting is being recorded.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Sorry about that. Yeah, Paul Bycott, statistician in oncology at Pfizer. Thank you.
Thank you. The Umut Offset. Umut?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hello from Turkey. Sorry, I was a little late. Thank you all for joining us today. It's night here. My name is Umut Özbek. I'm a biostatistician at Lilly, and I'm one of the organizers of this panel session. And I'm very excited to hear from our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you. And Todd?
Hi, everyone. My name is Todd Schwartz. I'm in the Department of Biostatistics at UNC Chapel Hill.
Thank you. And Wendy Wang.
Hello, everyone. My name is Wendy Wang. I am an instructional assistant professor of stats and data science at the University of Houston. So I got here very, unexpected. So I was checking my emails I received from ASA, and I just got this email, and I checked, oh, I'm right on time. So I just clicked in and joined this meeting. So nice to meet you guys here.
Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. Is there anyone that I didn't call? Could you unmute and then introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Estella Konevsky, and I'm a principal biostatistician currently working at Syneos Health and just kind of specializing in medical device and clinical trials. I'm really excited for this presentation.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Is there anyone else? It's almost everybody, right? Thank you for joining this webinar. Then let's just start with Elizabeth.
Great. Thanks so much to the organizers. I'm excited for today's discussion. I'll do just a brief kind of overview of my background, and then we were asked to provide a couple of high-level learnings just from our career in general, and then I think we'll transition into work-life balance in these challenging times. So in our discussion, I'm excited for that. So as I mentioned, I'm the acting director of the Information Access and Analytics Services Division at EPA. This is kind of the IT side of data science. I came into this role because of my interest in advancing big data capabilities at the agency. My division runs a cloud-based data management and analytics platform. We also run a lot of our geo tools and services. It's been an amazing learning experience for me to be involved with this division, again, kind of on the IT side, coming in as a statistician and really sort of seeing how those worlds work together. It's really symbiotic, and I think it's important for statisticians to have a bit of an understanding and a bridge to kind of that side of data science, and I've been really excited to be involved. That said, as I mentioned, I'm transitioning to the National Science Foundation, and I'm really excited about that. To kind of learn some new things on the statistical front in that role, and then hopefully be able to provide some hopefully insights and leadership on that front. And I'll make a note here that the leadership experiences that I've been able to gain through ASA, I think were extremely beneficial to my both learning about and sort of getting the job, so to speak, with both of these leadership roles that I have for now, what is now my job. And so you sort of have this building blocks that you can put together with what seem to be small experiences, maybe in a professional organization or as a volunteer, or maybe a key project that you were interested in on the side, but they can really lead to other things in your career, which is how I sort of found myself in these director roles, having come to EPA as a statistician several years ago, and really had a great time doing that at EPA. But again, kind of looking to see how I could make an impact at the agency in advancing certain types of capabilities. And I saw that on the director side of things. And I was in academics prior to that. So again, a lot of differences between those two roles, but some similarities as well in terms of sort of the high level learnings that I would mention. first and foremost, I would say absolutely do what you enjoy doing. Pursue projects that seem exciting, because that will be what leads to the next things. There's pieces of every job, of course, that aren't the most exciting every day, every minute. But absolutely, you should, generally enjoy what you're doing and look for those next opportunities. The perfect example is my statistician role at EPA. I came through that via a project I was working on in my postdoc, and my postdoc advisor, who's absolutely amazing, but she said, the statistical methods in this project maybe aren't as innovative, groundbreaking. They aren't going to get you a bunch of research methods papers. Maybe we should look at something else. And I said, happy to look at other things, but I'm really excited about this project, and I'm really excited about the work that they do at EPA, and I'm really excited about applied hands-on statistics. And that project, working with that statistician at EPA at the time, led to my first role at EPA. Similarly, when I was a statistician at EPA, I took a temporary position as an acting role in the Information Access and Analytics Services Division, which I had always intended to be temporary, however, ended up leading to a permanent position. And I had learned a lot in that role and was really excited about, again, kind of the IT side of data science, and learned something I never would have if I hadn't kind of just pursued this side project that was of interest. And if you'd asked me 5 years ago if I would be director of an IT division, I would have said absolutely not. That I don't know anything about IT. But I think we do as statisticians, but also we can certainly lend our insights and perspectives, and we are an important part of that conversation, I believe. So for me, it's exciting to learn new things. So that would be sort of one main takeaway. I have two other kind of main high level learnings, and one is network. So absolutely what we're doing today, great to have a chance to hear everyone introduce themselves. I would also point out there's a lot of different ways that networking can happen, as simple as joining this call last minute, as Wendy did. That's fantastic. Also, obviously through conferences, through receptions that are at conferences, meet and greets, etc. Mentors that you meet along the way, continuing to reach out to them. And also if you're reached out to as a mentor, then you can form some really valuable relationships that way as well. And I always point out to students and young professionals that your current peer group is your future networking group. And my peers as a postdoc, just my postdoc buddies, are now in kind of, fancy roles at their institutions. And so I learn a lot from them, and I'm able to reach out and make those connections for my students, or for myself, or for the committees, et cetera, that I'm involved with. Other ways to network are communities of practice, or helping with tutorials or writing blogs and articles, because that helps to get your name out there. And then I've done that, and people often reach back out to me interested in whatever topic the blog or article may have been on. So I've just, the value of networking cannot be understated, in my opinion. I owe all of my jobs to networking and kind of getting that inside track. But also, if they know you as a person and as a professional, then they're happy to pass along your name. I would say it's unlikely you will get a job just because you know someone, but you may hear of a job, or your name may be passed along. And that goes along with my third and final kind of high level learning, which is power skills. A lot of people refer to these as soft skills, but I absolutely think that they are. I heard this term a few years ago and I love it. Power skills. Things like leadership, taking on roles within your organization, within ASA, communication, absolutely very valuable on all fronts as a statistician, whether we're consultants, but also beyond the statisticians and beyond our scientific colleagues. We need to communicate with decision makers and with the public. And that's just in a completely different need, and on that communication front that can be really critical to learn as statisticians. I believe ASA is offering how to be an expert witness, something like that as you hone those types of skills. Decision-making skills yourself. How do you approach a situation? How do you distill information into something that is actionable? And going into strategic planning as well. How do you look holistically at an organization, sort of beyond an individual project, or how do you even look at a single project and learn project management skills? All of those power skills are important, as well as branding, how you brand yourself, your organization, everything that you do contributes to your brand in one way or another. And I think there's positive branding and negative branding as well. Of course, we want to focus on the positive. And again, it goes along with kind of networking and getting the name out there and meeting those in your community so that you're able to take advantage, you know, along your career path of the different twists and turns. And then also attending non-technical sessions at conferences. There's a whole world out there that goes beyond the technical sessions that are offered, which are also very valuable. But just JSM will have dozens on the program on leadership, on all of these points I just mentioned. I remember one on, if you're in academics, on how to be a department chair, right? So you can kind of search the program and find those other types of career paths that you can build upon. So I think with that, those are kind of my high level. And as I mentioned, very interested in the topic of changing careers in general. I've done that a few times. And then a whole new twist, of course, was added during the pandemic. And all of that is all part of work-life balance in these changing times. So I look forward to hearing others' perspectives on that as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Liz. Hae-Young, can you talk a little about yourself now?
Okay,
Your
thank
journey.
you so much. And then thank you for the organizer. And then I also thank you for everyone who joined today's session. So I got my doctoral degree in 2007. And then my first job after I got my degree in 2007 was more like a research position. So there was no teaching the requirement at all. So I have to work with more like investigator, like collaborator as a data coordinating center statistician. So work for many like NIH sponsored the clinical trial and some observational study. So work for as a part of a team. So I spent about 8 years there, like a research organization in Boston, and then I moved to my current position in, I think, 2015. So my current job is completely different from my old job. My current job is academic job, the associate, the professor position in the New York Medical College, and then it's more like expectation is more teaching. I mean, teaching does not only include giving the lecture in the class. We need to also advise the student. Then we need to also give guidance for their professional development, and then also work with the student for the research project so that they can participate in research conference, presentation, national conference, and then also they can work for the publication. So it's very important for them. So I need to also help them. So this is kind of more teaching, and then my current position is expectation is more about this. So it's very different from my old job. So it was very like, I mean, I had some like challenging time when I changed from my old job from my current job, because the expectation was very different. And then I tried to adjust my time, and then also try to more work with the student, so to try to help them. And the academic position, I think it depends on the organization, but there are kind of 3 expectations: teaching, research, and then service. It depends on school, which one has more higher percentage, but my school has more higher expectation for the teaching. So the first thing is that it's important to understand that there are more expectation for their job requirement. So if the expectation for my job is more like teaching, but if I don't like working with the students, then it will be some trouble. So I try to like understand what my role and then plan early. So my high level learning is more plan early. So try to spend more time with the student, and then if they need help for additional session, and then I try to save them more time, and then there are other school activity like students need to participate, and then I also try to support them. So and then also the preparing for the class material. The 2015, the reason I joined this school is the school started a master's program in 2015. So I joined the school. So I had to spend the time to develop new material for many of different new class. So, so that's also very challenging time, but I think plan early is one of high level learning that is very important for the career. And then another thing, high level learning is that I think Elizabeth just mentioned that enjoy what we are doing, try to enjoy what we are doing. That is very important. If I don't enjoy working with the students, they know it. They can easily tell. So, but I like also the working with the student, helping students. So I think that is also very important. And also my previous job, I also enjoyed working with the collaborator, investigator to learn about different disease and then different study design. So it's important thing is to we need to more try enjoy what we are doing. I think that is very important when we are doing. And also one of high level learning is try to learn from other people. It's not only for my manager or my boss. It's also from the other collaborator, other investigator, even if they are junior investigator. And there is something we can learn. And even for my student, I can learn from them. There are some students, they are asking very good questions. So they gave me opportunity to think about the problem. So also the high level learning is learning from the other people, including there are many other people like collaborator and student. So that is one thing I want to mention. And then another thing is also network is also very important, like Elizabeth mentioned, like try to attend more conference and then try to meet more people. And then that also thing is that, and then one of the challenging time also I want to mention for today is that for my current position, due to the COVID-19, before the COVID-19, all of class format are the in-person session. But after COVID hit, and then we had to change all class format as the Zoom. I have never done this before at that time. It was very tough time at the time. I did not know how to do it, and then also the class teaching interaction with the student is very important. And then in class session, we can easily tell whether they understand concept or not. We can easily tell. But Zoom session, many of them, they don't turn on the camera. So it's hard to tell whether they understand this concept. And then they don't ask also during the Zoom session. And then they don't interact each other well. So I try to set up more like the additional help session, and then try to meet more like regularly with the other students in addition to regular class time. So yeah, that's my experience and challenging time in high level learning. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And finally, Hong, would you care to share your experiences a little?
Yeah, absolutely. I started working at Lilly right after graduation and have been here for more than 20 years. Over the last 20 plus years, I have served as the lead statistician for a variety of compounds in different stages of development. I have to say, one of the key things for me I have learned is to ask for help, and I will focus more, a little bit more on specifically maintaining work-life balance. To me, reaching out and asking for help has been tremendously helpful for me. So couple of the things, right? So first, what help and support we can get from our workplace. Fortunately, at Lilly, the company offers quite a few options and flexibilities to enable that balance. So some of the options include medical leaves, parental leaves, you could do a part-time remote work, job share, among other options. And I have taken advantage of some of these flexibilities and utilized some of the options that worked for me and my family. So for example, after I had my first child, it was quite a exciting time, but also can be overwhelming at times. So I went to my management. Originally I was thinking, well, maybe I need to take some time off to figure out how to handle all of this changes in my life. And to this day, I'm very grateful that my management said, "Hey, we have some other different options. Let's look at them and see if any of them work for you." And sure enough, in the end, we reached a good solution where I reduced my work schedule to a part-time schedule, and also worked remotely for a period of time. Tremendous help, allowed me to really focus on my my personal life, adjusting to those changes in my life, but also being able to continue to pursue my career. And in addition to asking for help at work, I have also turned to my family and asked for help. We did not have extended families living close to us, and we decided at about maybe 15 years ago that we need to have a parent to stay home to take care of the kids when they're young. And my husband gave up his career to support me and the family. It was a great sacrifice on his part, but so I am, extremely thankful for that. Again, that's an option that worked for our family. There may be many other types and the levels of support that our families and the friends could and have provided. So I'll just end with another learning I would like to share is that there's also the other side, right? Which is to give help and support whenever we can and however we can. And that can be done either as colleagues or as management if you are in a supervisory situation. It can be to step in and to cover for a colleague, or to provide additional flexibilities and options to our employees when needed and appropriate as a manager. So again, thanks for the opportunity to be here with you all and share experiences and the learnings. I look forward to further discussing ways that we can help each other to have a fulfilling life and a meaningful career development. Thanks.
Wow, so what a terrific variety of perspectives. I'm Jenny, I'm Thompson. I'm gonna take a few seconds just as a moderator to do what I like to do, which is just talk a little bit about myself. And then in the meantime, I don't think that we have anybody controlling this meeting necessarily. So I believe if you have questions, you can unmute yourself and ask them directly, or if you're feeling a little shy, just put them in the chat and I'll monitor them as well. And if anybody has any lull in the meeting and can't think of a question, I have a prepared list. So we're in pretty good shape there. So I just wanted to I'm gonna start with a personal anecdote just to warm things up for me. In the past couple of years, since the pandemic, I've had my actual first real experience working with graduate students. And I work as a survey statistician, mathematical statistician in the government. And I work quite a bit with my colleagues outside who are in academics. And twice in the past year, someone said to me, I have this really great postdoc or a really great third-year graduate student, and I think they would really benefit from working on this project with you, and they could contribute a lot. And I would just like to say that I look back on myself at 23 and how talented and competent I thought I was, and I might be misleading myself a little bit. These graduate students needed a lot more help than I expected, and I think people don't give enough credit to people in academia for helping these people actually learn how to think independently and become contributing scientists. So I give you a big round of applause for that. And I really admire your patience. The other thing is all three of you brought up a theme about networking and attending conferences and other networking events. I want to take a quick step back to conferences. I tend to think more about the science side, but that's not fair in a work-life balance. In terms of the science, and I speak here from bitter experience, it takes a while to get anything published in a refereed journal, in a peer-reviewed journal. If you're really interested in what's going on in your field and you really want to make contacts that are going to do the same kind of work that you do in real time, it is very important to try to get to the conferences and to talk to the presenters. This is the best way to make connections. Speaking as someone who is very involved with, right, peer review process is almost always keep reading. That's where you're going to find, you know, state-of-the-art completed successful projects. But go to the conferences and meet people, because that's where you're going to find really good collaborators. And I had one final comment on that as well, and that is, as long as you are going to the conferences and reading, another good networking method and another good learning tool is to write a paper. In terms of work-life balance, I am a co-editor, as I think I mentioned before, at the Journal of Survey Statistics and Methodology. We have noticed a tremendous drop-off in the past few years of submissions. And I realized, we both realized, my co-editor and myself realized, that a lot of this is primarily due to so many people trying to figure out how the heck you can manage everything in this brave new world where you might be working from home and homeschooling your children, or trying to take care of a parent while being afraid that you might have infected a parent at the same time. But, you know, conferences are terrific for meeting people. Journals are forever. So I strongly encourage you, and at this point in time, I'd say your competition might be a little less than you think. So this is a good time to put something out there and get it peer reviewed and have someone take the time to actually give you some positive feedback. There'll be a stranger or two, but that doesn't matter. You know, strangers are just friends we haven't met, even anonymously. So with that being done with my bully pulpit, I was going to shut up for a second and see if anybody in the audience had a question. Or I guess it's not the audience, anybody out in the Zoom will have a question for our presenters. Okay, so many questions you're afraid to ask. So I'm going to pull out this list. I did actually have a question for all of you, since this is about work-life balance in the pandemic. And it kind of ties into something that Liz had mentioned she wanted to talk about. During the pandemic, I also switched jobs. I think that was a pretty common occurrence. But right before I did switch jobs, I was managing a fairly small staff. And with all of them in sort of different phases of life. We had some people who had very young children who are homeschooling, and we had some other people who were had fewer dependencies. And I had to make a lot of accommodations for everybody. I was sort of curious if you found in your own careers, if you found that people were making accommodations for you that helped you attain some kind of sanity or work-life balance. And if so, were any of these worthwhile, any of these accommodations worthwhile and things that you would like to share with the group, or think shouldn't just be pandemic related, they should just be common practices?
Yeah, Jenny, I'll address that quickly, and I'll flip it just a little bit, because the job that I came into in April of 2020, as the world had shut down, was my first permanent management position. And there were so many things being thrown at every person that I think accommodations were made on many fronts, and many of those I do think should be common practice. So for instance, we had a staff person who had a special needs child at home, and so when the world shut down, you know, needed accommodations to be able to jump on and off meetings, or maybe not have as many meetings in order to take care of that. And I think in a way that should be a bit of common practice, I think, to sort of help address family needs. Also had a staff member who was several months pregnant, and obviously that had nothing to do with the pandemic, but being able to easily switch their work days in the office so that they can go to medical appointments instead of driving back and forth and taking that time, things like that. And from my own personal experience, I have parents, as everyone does, who are and mine are aging, it seems exponentially over the last couple of years. And so, and my immediate supervisor when I came in also was dealing with aging parents. And it's just a different set of needs that I think is a little less understood than kind of childcare needs. Things can happen at the drop of a hat. There's, just different types of needs to balance on that front. So I was appreciative of the flexibility that I had, the ability to take sick leave in order to deal with those instances, et cetera. So I think there's just a gamut of things that people are always balancing. And I think that those are all really important considerations, and nothing to do with the pandemic, but over a decade ago, I went through a pretty terrible divorce, and there was a lot of flexibility in my job at the time because I was a postdoc. I was ending my PhD and moving into my postdoc, and the job itself allowed flexibility. But had I had a traditional 9-to-5 job at the time, I don't know how I would have handled a lot of the stuff that was thrown at me during that time. And I think that in general, there should be room for the understanding of those types of situations as well. So those are just kind of the experiences that I've faced in pandemic, and then also outside of pandemic, that I think should continue to be considered by employers and workplaces.
Great. Hae-Young or Hong, do you have anything to add?
No, I think Elizabeth covered it well. To me, really, we just need to, I think we need to communicate very openly and honestly and clearly about what are our needs, and be willing to work out solutions, but also help our colleagues or our employees be understanding to their challenges and the unique situations, and be willing to work with them, coming up, be creative, coming up with unique solutions tailoring to their personal circumstances. Sometimes it's not easy, and we may have to really be thinking outside of the box with the pandemic and all the things that came up in the last 2 years. But I think if there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, so I also want to add one thing. So for my case, after the pandemic hit, many of my students, they are international students. So they are the biostopher, many of them are international students, and then they wanted to go back to their country, and then so because they are very concerned about their family and then their parents. So I discussed with the school, and then my program also have more international students compared to other public health program. I discussed with the school, the management level, the senior people, and then so the school allow them to go to their country and they join the class through the Zoom from their country. But they have the student visa, but it's not in the before pandemic. It was not allowed like that. It's not like with the student visa, international students are not allowed to take any class online. But school allow them to take the class online, and I also had to work with the school to make that happen. And then so that's a very big challenge at that time, but it works well now.
That's absolutely wonderful. So we do have a question from the chat from Emily Leary, and she says, so I've heard work-life balance is a myth. It is work-life boundaries. How do you work to create and enforce boundaries to make work-life balance work? That's a great question. So,
Yeah, I'll jump on this again. I really like that term. I don't think I'd actually heard that work-life boundaries term, but I found myself needing to implement that over the last 2 years and really all throughout my career, as I'm sure applies to everyone, but especially this last 2.5 years when you really have that blurring of the line when, you know, my office was my kitchen table, et cetera. And there are also my division and I'm sure many others as well, just very overworked and understaffed. So it can be really hard because you feel that commitment, that loyalty to your team. But I would also say that it's so incredibly important to take care of yourself and your family. Obviously, you're not giving your best if you're not at your best. So I found myself, it's very hard to force myself to turn off the computer sometimes, you know, at 5 or 5:30. But I did get to a point where, you know, you realize the work never ends, right? There's always more work. There's not always more time with your family. And I just I created an internal list of priorities, and priorities would get addressed throughout the day and other things would be addressed as there was time. And there is not always time to address everything. That's not the definition of priority, right? So how do we create those for ourselves in order to do, you know, what we think is a good job at our work role, but also leave time for ourselves. And some of that is setting that physical boundary of turning off the computer, and others is setting once you're, you know, online and you're working, what are your boundaries in that space as well? What are the things that you are addressing to further your work, your team's work, et cetera, versus just busy work and answering all of the pings that never end from all directions. So I think there's many different types of boundaries that can be set, and I'm interested in what other panelists would think about that as well.
Yeah, I'll just add quickly to the, you know, the physical boundaries. I have to say I'm not doing a very good job about it because I set up my office in my bedroom. I used to have my office downstairs next to the kitchen, but then I quickly learned that it's often can have a lot of noises that I cannot control during meetings. So that's why I moved to my bedroom. And then I also quickly learned that I oftentimes find myself spending more than 22 hours a day in my bedroom, you know. So that's something that I have to be disciplined about, and it's a learning process. You know, I can't say that I'm at a good balancing point now, but because, you know, things always change, things evolve, challenges change, new challenges come up. So good learning journey. Yeah, I would say, to me, what helps is sometimes, you know, it can feel stressful. There's so many responsibilities from work and from personal lives. What helps me sometimes is for me to think in the framework of what are my responsibilities, both for work and for my family, and I, you know, take both of them seriously. If, you know, sometimes the work responsibilities may be critical enough that I will have to take a call during family dinner time, because, you know, I'm accountable for something and that it really needs my attention. But other times I take my family responsibilities very seriously too. I'll, you know, do everything I can to make sure I'm there for my family during dinner time, as much as possible. So it's not always smooth, but I think, you know, if we set up a clear framework of how we want to handle our responsibilities, our accountabilities for both work, for our profession, and for our families. It may help sometimes. One thing to be on the lookout for is, again, I learned through personal experiences that a lot of times I sacrifice me time. So I think that's something, you know, we need to do a better job for, is to take care of ourselves. While it's important to, you know, take our other responsibilities to heart, it really is imperative to keep our own well-being, to put on our own oxygen mask first before we can take care of others.
Yeah. So for my case, I mean, I also, I'm not sure if I'm doing this, creating this boundary very well, but I try to like set up the time for like a different task, like work task, also personal. I mean, work is important, but we also need to spend the time for our personal like life. In what we should have some kind of what we are enjoying. We need to spend some time. So my case is I'm trying to like set some time and then priority, make a list of the priority, and then try to use the based on the list. But I'm still trying. Well, sometimes it does not work, but I'm still trying as much as I can.
I think that we're all works in progress, actually. It's funny. Sometimes I think when my children were young, I worked part-time as well. And I think I had less me time because I felt like I had two full-time jobs, the one that I was working 40 hours a week at, and then the one I worked for every other hour of every minute of every day at home. I have found, and nobody's asked me, but I'll tell you anyway, I actually schedule an hour and a half for lunch every day on my calendar now. I don't take an hour and a half for lunch, but I put it there to keep me from having to actually work for that entire through lunch while eating. And I try to make sure that I have concrete appointments after work. And people who have kids often find that those appointments just come for you. You've got to pick up your kid until they can, you know, drive themselves. And you really don't want your kid sitting out in the rain or whatever it is, but that's not going to happen for everybody. So I try to, you know, sign up for a yoga class or make sure I have some place to be so that I actually do shut down the computer. All right, so moving on, and I'll stop talking about me. We have time for a few more questions. Do we have more questions from people that would like to pose in person or in the chat? If not, I've got the backup questions. All right. I guess I will just go for the backup questions in order then. So the first on this list is, can you share how you overcame the most challenging times in your career?
So I'll just quickly follow up on the two things I mentioned previously. It's when I went through a divorce, which was not in the pandemic, but I mentioned just the amount of time, emotion, energy that takes. I had a lot of legal issues involved with that. So I had to be during working hours in legal proceedings and meetings with lawyers, et cetera. So balancing that was really tricky. But one of the things that I did was I told my supervisor what was going on. It was not, you know, if anything I was ashamed of, but wasn't necessarily, you know, broadcasting this publicly to all of my peers and colleagues, but letting the people around you know what's going on, so they know why you may not be at your desk every minute, but that you are available in some other way. You'll follow up in the evening, you know, whatever it is. I think, you know, I think that made all the difference of just letting someone know rather than disappearing randomly throughout the day. Similarly with letting people know what's currently going on with my parents. Again, the needs are sometimes set in advance if I need to take them to a procedure, but can also pop up. And I think really important, pinging off of the self-care, is that in both of those situations, emotions go well beyond the time you block off on your calendar, right? So it's really important, I think, to recognize that, give yourself space for that. So for instance, I may set aside a day to take. My father has regular surgeries, and it's a day at the hospital. And sometimes I do get home, quote unquote, early, and I think, oh, I should log in and answer emails. But I need that time. I'm worn out. I'm drained. I've seen my father go through a lot. I need that time for myself to decompress, etc. So I think it's important to take that time beyond those types of appointments. Just the physical time of the appointment, to have that time and space that you need for yourself, which I did not do early on in my career, but I'm a little better about now.
Yeah. We life really is a learning process. I shared earlier about how I was able to get help and support after I had my first child. Was able to take a reduced work schedule, and then later on was able to work from home. Tremendous help. And then I'll share another learning. This is more on the maybe the personal side. Is before I had my first child, I was a workaholic, right? I really thought that I can handle anything, any challenges, any difficulties. I can do it all by myself. And really, having a child really changed my life and changing my outlook too. One thing I learned is that I did not have much support at the beginning, especially in terms of emotional support. Did not really have a support system or friends to turn to for questions, for concerns, all of that. And it also didn't really turn to my husband for help much, thinking that, well, he doesn't have to wake up in the middle of the night with me. Doesn't, need both of us to suffer, right? I can just take care of everything by myself. But I quickly learned that I do need to ask for help, and I did, especially with my second child. Things went much more smoothly because I realized that I cannot do everything by myself. It really takes a village. So learned it the hard way, but wanted to share it here that really don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help. Don't think it'll be a failure if we ask for help. It truly is not. And I think, I have learned others are more than happy to help when you ask.
I think it's true. For my case, for my work, the professional challenges, as I mentioned before. So when I moved to a new job, then it was very different. The expectation was very different, and then so I should develop the new curriculum. But there was one senior level, the bios faculty, and then I tried to get some support and help from him. Then I work with him together. So this was very helpful. So I think we need to ask help and support if we need. And then for the personal life, the most challenging time was when I moved to US in, I think it was 1999. So I came here in the US for my degree. I did not know anything about it. It was very different. But many people also helped me at that time. So I think it's very important to ask help if we need it. Yeah.
Follow up with a comment from Liz. If you have the option as well to take advantage of workplace options like the Employee Assistance Program, they are terrific. And many agencies and organizations have them where they offer counseling and life coaching and peer groups, because all of us need some help at some time. And it's not a weakness to ask for it. I think you might think of it as a weakness not to take advantage of the resources that are given to you freely. I just looked at the clock. This hour just flew by. And we are scheduled from 2 to 3. And like all good federal employees, I actually have another meeting in 5 minutes. So I'm going to have to wrap this up myself. But this was absolutely terrific. I was going to mention real quickly, someone sent me a list of follow-up questions just in case nobody asked any questions. And all of you did such a terrific job of touching on all of these topics that I didn't need to, or they would have been redundant. So I want to thank the three panelists for giving such lively and interesting presentations and sharing so much of their own experience. I always like to ask people to take themselves off of mute for a second and do a real clapping. This is when we'll hear everything going on in the background, but if you're afraid to do that, then just use an emoji. But let's give everybody a round of applause for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you.
everyone.